everyone, this is your host alexbalgood and this is Leap of Health. And today we have Jolene Abercromby. She's a nutritional therapy practitioner and we're going to be talking about fermented food, which I love so much. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about you, tell us a little bit about your story and how you decided to be a nutritional therapy practitioner.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My story is one that probably a lot of people in my industry in general have come upon. They struggled with their health their whole life, and then they found something that worked. And when I found something that worked, like I was overweight most of my life, going up and down, trying to find health, thinking skinny was healthy, and it's not. Unfortunately, we wish it was, but it's not. And so I just started on eating real whole foods and started learning as much as I could. And it led me to go back to school. That's when I became a nutritional therapy practitioner. I've lost over 80 pounds at least 3 times in my lifetime. But this time was 7 years ago and it's still gone. So I think I found the magic pill, sort of say, which means it's a lot of hard work. And fermented foods played a really big role. Gut health played the biggest role in all of it. With autoimmune issues and just learning how to support the body better. And each one of us is different. And that's why I think in the past, everything had always failed is because it was always these cookie cutter diets. You know, you got Weight Watchers where you're counting points, or you've got the grapefruit diet, Special K diet, all those diets that are like, eat cereal. And the Special K diet was one of those weird ones where you ate the cereal 3 times a day. And you were always hungry. So learning to support your body, giving what it needs nutrient wise, how to get it so that your digestion's working, so it's absorbing it. That's all led me to where I am now. And now I help other women, men, figure out what their body needs rather than what society tells them they need. Like, we all are unique. Each one of us has a different microbiome makeup, which is your gut bacteria, and it's a whole ecosystem in there. And they're finding that when you live with a spouse, you end up being very similar. Like, people who live together, their microbiome changes to just that. Like, the research is phenomenal. And then you take the ancestral approach and what our ancestors maybe didn't know as much about, but they knew it kept you healthy. And merging the two together has been a fascinating journey for me. And it always piques my knowledge. It's like, what can I learn today? What can I learn today?
Yes, no, I hear you. I am the same. Every time I see some new modality or some new thing that it's happening that, and these are not new things because they've been around for a long time, like Ayurveda and Oriental medicine, acupuncture, and certain other things that we think like, oh, they're like the new thing that people are doing, but people are literally been doing this for like 5,000 years, 3,000 years, and but we're just kind of like now trying to understand things that they've been doing for a long time, kind of like what you were talking about, like what did our ancestors did, um, that that we're not doing now, and that we're now trying to discover again, like what did they do? Did they live, past 100 years? Most of our like great grandparents, because their food was different, the water was different, like a lot of different things that were there and play a role into their overall health.
Absolutely. And when you think about like your grandparents or your great grandparents, they still ate things that nowadays people think are bad, like bread or sweets, but they were made at home. They weren't
Mhm.
made in a processing factory. They didn't have the additives and the preservatives in it. And there is this definite downfall of health if you time it to the industrial age and the modern food, stemming pretty much from World War I into World War II. And it kept going down the more processed food was available. And it all goes back to getting back to our roots of what did they eat? What did your grandparents eat? And your grandparents ate different than my grandparents. My grandparents are from the Mediterranean. Our cultures and our microbiomes are all adjusted to that, and what foods we ate, what we can tolerate, what we can't. How do we get back to that? And ferments every single culture everyone has some sort of fermented foods. And they can date it back as early as 10,000 years ago or 10,000 BC.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they can date back. We don't know. And it was stumbled upon. It was a way of preserving food. It really wasn't meant to be for health. It was a way for them to have food through the winter. However, the health benefits that came along with it, we didn't even know the health benefits until we learned about bacteria, which was in the late 1800s. But people still, they knew they felt healthier when they had it, so they kept doing it. And they also wanted their food to last a long time. So it's just like the science is there, except for they didn't know it. And people today were like, oh, well, that's just old wives' tales. But it's actually, you're willing to take a probiotic pill. Are you willing to eat the food that it comes from? Like that's what triggers me. It's like always going back to the foods. Why are we trying to take a pill when we have the foods that are superior?
Yeah. And I think it just goes back to what you said at the beginning, where people might want to just have something fast, like processed food, just like, let's take this and that's it, let's go. And I think we're in our modern society, it's so easy to think that way, I think. And now it's more like, no, what about if we eat some of the things that our great grandparents did, our grandparents, some of our grandparents are still doing that. And as you said, it was not, they didn't do it for health wise at all. They were doing it because the modernization wasn't there. They didn't, some of these cultures didn't have refrigerators like we do have. Now we buy food, put under a refrigerator, and lasts you for a lot longer. But back then, it was like there's no refrigerator, there's no waste, there was no all these chemicals to keep our food alive for like 6 months, a year, like all this packaged food. They had to like come up with like putting foods in salts, putting things to ferment, putting things, make a hole on their backyard or whatever, and keep it as cool as they could. So I think it's all these things that they did for survival in a way that we have such an easy life
We do.
now. It's like, what do you want to eat? Chinese, Thai, Italian, just call Uber Eats. I mean, it's crazy,
It,
right?
it's absolutely crazy. And there is a way to meld both together. And I don't want to, sometimes I come across as like, you can only eat real foods and ferments and this. The goal is to merge it together so we can get the best of both worlds, basically, because there is something to say about advancement as well.
Right.
But we are always looking for an easy button for health, for weight loss, for whatever it is. We want to get to in a straight line there as quick as possible without putting in the work. But maintaining proper health over long periods of time takes some effort. And it's effort that becomes second nature. So it doesn't, like, now I can tell you, oh, it's really easy, but I've been doing it for a long time. It's not something that the first month or two was easy. It was difficult. It required a lot of brain power to focus on, oh, should I have this? Should I not? Or read labels. Like, I mean, who wants to go to the grocery store and read labels? Like every single label before you buy it and goes in the cart, you're looking at the ingredients. Everybody kind of reads the calorie part. I get that, but reading the ingredients. And now I'm at an age where sometimes I actually have to take a picture of the ingredients and blow it up to actually see it. So then I just look like a weirdo at the market.
No, it's great.
It's just learning what's in your foods, but learning to maximize the benefits. And that's where fermented foods come in. You can buy them at the store. Like, you don't have to be and make your own science kitchen, your science project in your kitchen. There are foods that you can get that are fermented properly at the market. So it's not really going to add a lot of effort other than adding them in. And that's where I find people have the most benefit, is by adding in these fermented foods. They don't understand how their gut's off. And it may not be by a lot, but a probiotic, with the new research coming out, at worst, it's doing nothing. Like, they don't even know if taking a probiotic supplement is actually doing anything.
Right.
We don't know. And they know that through the fermented foods, and when things are fermented, it's got the bacteria and the sugars that the bacteria eat, and it produces a byproduct that they call metabolites. And that's where they're finding lately in the newer research where all the benefits are coming from. And that's why the ferments can be so superior to taking a probiotic pill. And
Mm-hmm.
in the long run, it's not that expensive. I mean, you can get sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented pickles, cultured vegetables, besides yogurt, kefir. There's so much at the market these days at your
Mm-hmm.
rate. Like you can go to Walmart. It's not like you have to go to a specialty food store anymore to get fermented foods. You can get them at Walmart.
Yeah, it's super easy.
Mm-hmm. So like it's so important. It's such a small thing to do, but it has such a huge impact on your health. And until I was working with my sister-in-law, and I'm like, just try it. Just trust me. Try this sauerkraut. And then she went to the store and bought sauerkraut, but she bought the one in the can.
Mm.
For your listeners, we can go over which kind of sauerkraut you want. You don't want that one. That's not the fermented sauerkraut. So I got her some of the real stuff, and she started taking it, and she started seeing huge changes. And she's a little tiny woman, huge changes in a matter of a few weeks. Couple weeks. I think she like started losing the bloat, and she's older. So a lot of this is, postmenopausal. So there's a lot of other issues going on, but it just your gut controls everything. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
fermented foods can give you the fibers, give you everything you need for your hormones, weight loss, mental clarity. Your gut's tied to so much. Like I can't stop preaching about like eat some fermented foods. It's like 2 tablespoons. It's not even a lot.
Yeah, it is not. And I know for some people that might be like, I don't know, what is this fermented food? What do they put? Let's backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
What is fermented food for everybody that it's being like on the edge of like, smells weird or this or that, whatever. Because I feel like the most common fermented or not even fermented, but things that has probiotics in this case will be yogurt. And the yogurt that we're eating, it's full of sugar. So literally you're getting 0 probiotics and probably like half a cup of sugar
Yeah.
if you're eating it with flavor. If you're eating Greek food, Greek style yogurt, maybe you're getting a little bit more of the benefit there, but still not as much as probiotics as you probably will like. So let's start from there. What
Okay.
is fermented foods?
Okay. So fermented foods is basically taking a dairy, or vegetables. There's drinks as well. And you're introducing a sugar, and the bacteria generally comes either from something that's already started, like a starter culture, which makes it a lot easier for those of us in the modern world. We just can get a starter culture. Or in the case of something like sauerkraut or kimchi, it's using the bacteria off the actual vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And then you use salt. For cultured vegetables, it's generally a salt brine, and then you massage it in. And for sauerkraut, kimchi, you just massage the salt in and the liquid comes out. So you don't actually have to add any liquid. And then you let it sit for a few weeks, and it pulls the bacteria from the air. It pulls the bacteria that's inside of it, and it starts fermenting. It bubbles. Sometimes mold comes. It's not bad mold. You got it. If you're going to make it at home, you have to know what you're doing, because you have to know when to scoop the top layer off and it's safe, or when it's not safe, because there is a point in time where it's too low and it's not safe. But fermented things are
Well,
just,
follow
they're
the
living.
instructions there.
Yeah, there's some instructions, and just because there might be a little mold on the very top doesn't mean that the whole thing's bad. It's just there's some really great people that have great cookbooks on fermenting if you're interested in that. But it just takes a few weeks, and then it creates all the probiotics naturally and these metabolites, like I say, because it bubbles. Original ginger ale was fermented ginger. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
It was fermented ginger water. Um, Even root beer was a fermenter. I think it might have been originally sassafras, but those are all fermented drinks. Your kombucha,
Mm-hmm.
you do need a starter to start with, because it's a very symbiotic culture that you have. It's a very specific culture. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
couple different kinds of kombucha. There's regular kombucha, and then June kombucha, which is made with honey, which has different benefits. So it's basically letting the bacteria eat the sugars in the whatever you're fermenting. And then after a while, the sugars go away and you're left with this food that has probiotics in it. If it's a vegetable, you also have prebiotics because you have the fibers from the vegetables. That's where they're a little bit of added benefit. When it comes to yogurt, fermenting yogurt at home is really simple, especially if you have an Instant Pot. And I always tell people, do it for 24 hours. When you ferment for 24 hours yogurt, you get the bacteria you want without all the added sugars because you're doing it yourself. And you can choose the quality of milk you want to use. Like I use organic half and half because I like it lower carb for me personally. I add a little bit of inulin, which is a fiber, to help make sure there's enough food for the bacteria in there to eat. And it's easy, but if you want to buy it, it's easy to do that too. But you really want to make sure it says fermented, that doesn't have added sugars in it. There's lots of kombuchas out there, and I know that's like kind of a trendy drink right now. And there's some that have a lot of added sugar, and there's some that has very little, and there's some that have added sweeteners that aren't sugar to make it taste better. I don't mind the ones, there's a brand that I get that's just sweetened with juice, which is the second ferment. And you use a quarter bottle with some sparkling water. You don't need to drink the whole bottle in a sitting. A serving is a quarter of that bottle, even the normal. Otherwise, you're getting a lot of sugar. You're defeating the purpose.
Yes.
A serving of sauerkraut is 2 tablespoons. It's not a bowl of sauerkraut. Think of if you've ever been out for Korean food, when they give you kimchi, you're not having a bowl of kimchi. You're having a couple tablespoons, a few bites with your food.
Yeah. I am so happy. I am so happy you're mentioning this because I think, and I know a lot of people that does this. They buy the kombucha, the whole bottle, and they just drink it all on one sitting, like it's water. And you have a great point right there where it is a good thing to drink if it's low in sugar. However, if you're drinking the whole thing, now you're eating all these servings of kombucha, and then now you're gonna add all these grams of sugar that you're eating, which is about, I think the ones that have the least sugar might be like 4 to 5 grams of sugar, sometimes 7. I think I might be off a little bit, but if you're taking 2 to 3 servings of kombucha at once, now let's say if it was 4, now you're eating 12 grams of sugar. That's kind of like a lot.
Yeah. And the bottles I'm talking about is, I know that they have the giant bottles. I'm actually talking about a 16-ounce bottle.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the giant bottle. And I know that the bottle itself says 1 serving, but I get a brand and it's I'll go through the back. There's a couple probiotic drinks that are very low in sugar, but kombucha, the lowest I found is I think 16 for the entire bottle. So if I'm drinking a quarter, that's 4 grams of sugar. It's still a lot, but if you're eating a low sugar diet, you figure out what you're doing. Especially if you're diluting it, it's not as sweet. It's actually kind of bland. Because when you make it at home, I can control the sugar, but I'm going to tell you, I don't know anybody who's going to drink my homemade kombucha because it's almost vinegar. Because that's the only way I can get the sugar out.
Yeah, I make my own too. And it can be super vinegary.
It's really good for your hair if it goes really vinegary, like where you can't drink it. It's a great rinse for your hair.
Well, I used to for cleaning once. If I forget to kind of like make it again, like another batch, I just like save it and then I use it as a regular vinegar, like for cleaning and stuff. So, or like to clean the toilets and things like that. Just use it for that.
Oh yeah, it is vinegar at that point. I mean, apple cider vinegar, technically, if you get the one with the mother, is fermented apples. I mean, it gets there. It's just over the top. It's not something you're going to want to. Apple cider vinegar is great for you, but you're not going to want to drink a whole glass of it. You're going to put an ounce in a bunch of water to drink it. Like if you're going to drink it.
Exactly.
We forget that we're so used to getting a bottle that's a serving and drinking the whole bottle that we forget that sometimes it's not meant for that. And also, if you're new to fermented foods, drinking a whole bottle can affect your gut. It could be too much too fast. eating too big of a serving of ferment, like yogurt's probably one of the few things that doesn't do that, but it still could. Any kind of fermented vegetables, when you eat a big enough serving, or you eat, like, let's say you eat it 3 times a day, could have the opposite effect because it's introducing too much too fast. I don't know if you've ever, there's a lot of probiotics out there now that they're, or at the time when I was learning a lot about the probiotics in school, about soil-based probiotics. Not everybody can handle that. It's almost too much. It's too many different strains. And the problem with probiotic supplements versus probiotic foods is the supplements, we don't know what we're missing inside our gut. The foods don't have very specific strains, except for yogurt where they're added in. They're just natural strains that feed other strains. So it lets our body balance it out. Where the supplement, we're adding in very specific strains. I get it that it says 1 billion, whatever, but there's trillions upon trillions of different bacteria inside of us. So we're still throwing it off one way, especially if you take the same one every day for months on end. You don't have that problem with food.
Yeah, that's a really good point to keep in mind too when it comes to probiotics, because a lot of people just, as you said, it's just one specific probiotic that you're taking, and if you're taking it daily, yeah, I think, as we always said, usually whole foods and getting or the things that we need from actual foods will be so much better and so much cheaper too.
Exactly. In a variety. Like,
Yeah.
even when it comes to supplementation, you want a variety. And if that's the way you choose, I'm not going to argue with you, but you want a variety. You don't want to take the same one every month. You want to take you want to have 3 to 4 at your ready that are different, that have different strains, and take and cycle through them. The same with probiotic foods. You don't want to eat the same brand and the same flavor of sauerkraut day in and day out. Get some kombucha, get some yogurt, so you have a variety, so you're getting the different types of bacteria, because dairy will have different bacteria than vegetables, than kombucha, than kefir. Like, they all have different strains of bacteria. And they all have different strains of metabolites that we know are feeding the bacteria that's inside of us. So it's really variety. Even with foods, you want a variety of foods because they'll feed your gut bacteria. Even if they're not probiotic foods, you want a variety of vegetables. Whatever you eat, you don't want to eat the same food every single day. It throws off your gut. Just the same way as taking the same kind of pill or eating the exact same probiotic food every day. They'll all do the same thing. We want to make sure we have some sense of variety in our diets so that our gut health can flourish.
Yeah, that's super important. And I feel like too, we like super easy things that we're like, okay, I'm gonna start eating fermented food. I'm gonna buy sauerkraut. And then you just eat that all the time. I might be guilty. I love sauerkraut. But
I know.
You make a really good point. Let's kind of like switch it up, you know, maybe add a little bit of yogurt, maybe kimchi, kombucha, things like that. What are some of the things that you do with your clients to start them? What are some of the elements that you're like, okay, maybe add these or add that, like just to ease them into fermented foods? Because also I think people gets discouraged on these things if the flavors are like too intense, or as we said, they might be a little bit on the vinegary side of it.
Yeah, I usually start with a little bit of sauerkraut, or if they can tolerate kimchi. Not everybody likes kimchi. I know it's very spicy. There's a subset of the population that doesn't like spice. I can't help it.
Right.
There's so many fermented foods out there, though, and I found that when I've stopped in the stores that carry it's a brand called Cleveland Kraut. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but they have a variety of flavors. So they have sauerkraut with beets, sauerkraut with carrots and garlic. So the variety of flavors alone in that will be beneficial because you're getting different things from the different vegetables that are added in. Now, if you can hit up an Italian deli, you might even find, if you ever had antipasto, you know that they have like the cauliflower, the carrots that are all kind of pickled. Well, they also have a version of that that's fermented. So it's really important that we make sure that we look for a variety of fermented vegetables. but there's nothing wrong with yogurt. Getting in the yogurt will help. Look for Greek yogurt. Look for yogurt that isn't necessarily as pasteurized. So it has some of the natural things in it. We also want to, I do start with some of the probiotic drinks. There's, besides kombucha, there is something called kivat. I don't know, I might not have said that right, but it's really low in sugar. So if someone isn't into the sauerkraut.
Is it like dairy drink, or is it more like
No, it's actually,
like
it's
like
more
a
like a
soda
kombucha,
type
but it's more like a kefir
kefir?
or kefir water,
Uh-huh.
kefir water versus the dairy. So it
Mm,
has the probiotics, but it is very low. It's a lot lower. Like the whole bottle is only 6 to 7 grams of sugar. So it's a lot
mm,
lower in sugar.
mm-hmm.
Um, Especially someone who's not used to drinking a lot of water. I don't necessarily want them to go to kombucha because they will drink the entire bottle because they're
Yes.
not getting in their water. They're thirsty. Um, or teaching them how to dilute it with sparkling water to make like a mocktail out of it or something. And then, just little by little, like if they can't do the sauerkraut, trying to find fermented beets is probably the next, because at least it has a little bit more sweetness to it. It's not as sour,
Mm-hmm.
because it's usually the sour, and removing, and I know a lot of people are scary about this, but removing added sugars other than maybe a kombucha or yogurt or something like that, but like trying to remove as much added sugar to get the taste buds to readapt. The taste buds readapting help you start enjoying the sour.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds weird, but also maybe adding the sauerkraut to a salad so it's spread out and they're not just eating a tablespoon of sauerkraut.
Yeah.
So if they add it in with all their other flavors, it just adds a little bit of flavor with their dressing. So lots of times they can tolerate it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Just finding ways to sneak it. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of finding ways to sneak it in.
Mm-hmm.
Sneak it in so you don't taste it until you get used to it.
And it's delicious, I gotta say. Or I don't know, my taste buds love it.
I
I
know.
love it. You were talking about a pickled what's called the cauliflower.
Mm-hmm.
I love it because I know Italians and Mexicans do pickle like carrots and cauliflower, and obviously we pickled jalapenos
Peppers. Well, we
and
do the
and all
pepperoncinis,
this.
but it's this,
Yeah, are
between the
you Italian?
pepperoncinis and the jalapenos, it's the same thing. Yeah, I'm Italian.
Okay, yeah, yeah. We have a lot of similarities. But yeah, we do all these pickled things that we just added to the food, and it's just I feel like it makes food so much more delicious, because you're right. You don't have, like, you will never go to a Korean spot and have a bowl of kimchi. Like, I never thought about it that way, because I could be a little intense when I eat, or when I add good things into my added. But you're so right. You're never gonna see anyone eat a bowl of just kimchi. It's about a variety when you eat, and it's just a little bit. You just need a little bit of this goodness in your meals.
Mhm. And there are fermented pickles. That is actually a place I will start some people, because
Mm-hmm.
there's very few people who don't like pickles.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one that's only one or two brands that I know of that make actual fermented pickles versus pickled pickles. They're different, and so you have to really pay attention so
What's
that
the
it says
difference?
fermented on it.
What's I
A
I thought they were fermented. So I might be
No, not all
off
pickles
right
are
here.
fermented. Pickles are
Oh.
always in a brine, but it depends on if they're left on the counter. I don't know how they commercially do it, but they leave it out to do the same fermenting process to turn it into a pickle. And then a normal way is putting a hot salt and vinegar brine over it. You seal it up right away and put it away where it never gets the air to start fermenting. Is the big difference.
Wow. Okay,
So
okay.
it's pickled versus fermented, and that's where anything fermented is going to be in the cold deli section. It will never ever be on a shelf. That's the first clue. If you find something on a shelf, it ain't fermented. Look in the deli
Yes.
section. Is generally there. A lot of the stores now are carrying, even Boar's Head and Bubby's all have some sort of fermented things. I found some other more traditional deli brands the other day. So you should be able to find them wherever they have the deli meats at your market. Um,
Mm-hmm.
The deli meats, not like where they're in the pre-pack, like the deli meats by the deli section where they might cut your meat as well.
Hmm.
Sliced like cold cuts, that kind of deli section.
Right, right.
Um, I'm like, wait a minute, because there is the cold section where they have like sliced turkey and all that. It's generally not there. It's over by wherever they have cold cuts that would be
Hmm.
fresh. Or if they
Yeah.
make sandwiches, it'll be over there. And I pretty much have found it almost at every store. As well as like the probiotic drinks now are showing up probiotic, and there's prebiotic drinks. Just be leery of some of the prebiotic drinks because they do have a lot of sugar in them. They're
Hmm.
very sweet. Um, they're not bad. I will never say they're bad for you because I myself will drink them, but you have to pay attention to it. Like if you're drinking every few days, that's not a big deal. If you're drinking one a day, replacing your like if you're replacing your soda habit with it, that's a good first step because it's still a
Hmm.
lot lower in sugar than that. And then start cutting it back, half a can or a can a week, stuff like that, because it is sweet. It
Yeah.
doesn't have a ton of sugar, but it still tastes very sweet to me at least. But my taste buds are, I think sauerkraut's delicious. So
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. I think too, once you start eating certain foods like that, that they're like a little bit more into the sour side or spectrum of things, sweet things will taste to you very sweet, I think,
mm-hmm.
which is a good thing because honestly, now when I see certain things that I'm like, oh, that looks yummy, and I try, a pastry or something like that, like to
It's
me,
not.
to my taste buds, it just becomes like so sweet that I'm like, oh, it didn't taste as I thought it would. And so I just really end up eating a lot less of sweets, right? That I feel
Mm-hmm.
like in the long run, uh, that's a good service to you than as a servant to you. So it might be a good thing to just start eating sour things because when you eat sweet things, you might be like, ah, too much.
It is, and I just remembered there's a newer probiotic drink out that tastes like cola, and one that tastes like root beer, and I think they have another flavor. So if you are trying to curb your soda habit, it's in a bigger bottle. And the thing is when you're looking at kombucha or these probiotic drinks, they're $5 a bottle. So drinking a quarter or a half just to get that edge out compared to your 50 cent or dollar. So I don't know. I don't even know how much soda is anymore. It's probably a dollar 50. Look at it that way. Don't drink the whole bottle. Just drink enough to get that itch off of that soda fix and move on. But it still has the great probiotics in it as well. It's fermented the same way. So it's not going to taste just like cola or root beer because it's got that little bite
Ick.
to it,
Yeah.
that little bite to it. But you know what, they become a substitute when you don't have the other thing because
Yeah.
they taste, to me it tastes great, but I haven't had the real thing in so long that I probably, if you put them next to each other, I probably will always go for the probiotic drink
Yeah.
over the other one anyways anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So for for the beginners, how many times should we be adding uh probiotics to our diet, like in a week, in a day? Like how
I
much
would
is
say,
too much or how many is too less
okay,
to
I would
feel a
say start
difference?
slow. If you're
Hmm.
coming straight off a standard American diet, haven't added any probiotics in at all other than maybe a supplement, start slow. A couple tablespoons some point in the day. Try to get it daily, but if you notice that you're getting some gut rumblings, back off and start doing it every other day, and then just increase it as you feel. Um, the maximum limit is kind of up to your body. You don't want, I mean, you're not going to want to eat like a whole jar of sauerkraut because besides the fermenting process, that's a lot of fiber. Your body probably between the two isn't going to like you very much. But
Hmm.
2 to 3 servings a day is optimum when you can build up to that. Don't ever start at the 3. Trust me, you're not gonna, you're gonna be like, oh no, my stomach doesn't like me, and go backwards unless you're adding in like a yogurt, like a quarter cup of yogurt, a couple tablespoons of sauerkraut. The yogurt is easier for most people to tolerate. So when you're adding in the second serving, you might want to start with the yogurt because it's not as strong or potent as a sauerkraut, a kombucha even, because too much kombucha can go right through you as well. Um, and nobody needs to worry about kombucha and alcohol anymore because they all have to be, anything store bought has to be tested. before it can go on the store shelves for alcohol anymore. There was a big brouhaha in the 90s because they didn't realize how much alcohol was in it from the fermenting process. And so that's why a lot of the kombuchas now have a little more sugar in them, because they have to stop that fermenting so that it doesn't have, it's like a very low amount, like it's less than 0.001 or something like that, but they have to get it stopped so that it doesn't keep producing, because that's a byproduct eventually. Anything fermented, a byproduct eventually, if you let it go too long, will be alcohol.
Right.
Not a
And
lot,
now,
just
love it. Well, yes, it just depends how long you leave it. But I know now
it
they have,
depends.
because now they have specifics now, right? That it's hard kombucha. And I know some of my friends are like, well, I'll drink a hard kombucha as opposed to a regular kombucha. And I'm like, well, now you're eating way a lot more sugar. You're drinking alcohol. You're not getting a lot of probiotics. What's the point of that? So don't try to be smart to your own body and be like, well, I am doing really good. I'm drinking hard kombucha, which is alcohol. So it's like drinking a
Yeah,
beer.
it is. It's the same as having a cocktail. It might be slightly better for you, but it's the same thing. It's still got the alcohol. It's still gonna disrupt your gut the same way if you have problems with alcohol. And it usually has more sugar in it to make it taste better. So because they figure if you're
Exactly.
drinking, it don't matter if it doesn't matter if it has the sugar or not.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, honestly, beer and wine are both fermented as well. So is most mead, which is a form of beer. A lot of alcohols they're either distilled or fermented, but wine is generally fermented. Champagne, that's where the bubbles come from. That doesn't mean that all fermented foods are great to have all the time. On occasion, you're an adult, it's fine, but on a daily basis, you don't want the alcohol ferments. You want the food ferments.
Yeah. Let's not get all smarty panties over here and be like, well, I've been having fermented foods the whole week. I had a glass of champagne every day. So yeah, let's not do that. But just, keep in mind that there's a lot of variety of things. And I like that you did point that out, because I do feel like we get stuck up on just one thing, like, oh, I need to just eat these all the time. And that might be like tedious and boring, especially when you're trying to like change your diet. So people gives up on things. So change it up. Yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, pickled things that are fermented, important. And yeah, and if you want to build chef and get crazy on it, you can find a lot of fermented recipes on YouTube, online, and all these things, which is so fun to do. Honestly, I love to make kombucha, so try new things
Yeah.
for sure.
My latest one for next week is trying beet kvass, which is fermented beet juice.
Mm,
So
okay. Yeah, I've been actually I get things from a farm, kind of like nearby here, and they do a lot of fermented beets. I had no idea you could ferment beets too. Like, I come from like cabbage and cauliflower and a lot of peppers, because we do a lot of those, and kimchi now and stuff like that. But I didn't know also for the beets, they were actually pretty tasty, and they've been doing that in people have done fermented beets for the longest time too.
fermented beets are also really good for glucose control. There's something in
Mm,
the beet that helps with even though beets in general are higher in sugar,
right, right.
they have something in them that help with glucose control. So fermenting them gets that sugar out. So then it becomes a double whammy especially if you're struggling with higher glucose or higher blood sugars. Fermented beets can be a great additive to your diet
And
in general.
and they're delicious too. To
Yeah,
add
they're
like
not
in
nearly as
salads.
sour.
Uh-huh. Yes, exactly. Yes, for sure.
And just think of how you can add it to your meal. So maybe, if you don't like it straight, add it to a meal and see, like some of the sauces that you put on your food, just don't heat it up. That's the only thing I have to ask is don't heat it up. It's got to be room temperature or cool so that you don't kill off the bacteria.
Hmm.
But you can add it to your starter salad. You can add it to your plate and mix it in with whatever vegetable once the vegetable's at room temperature, as long as it's not piping hot. You just don't want to cook it. And sometimes that can take that bitey edge off to get you to eat it. And then eventually you'll enjoy, the more you eat it, the more your taste buds will adapt to it. And then you'll enjoy it like we do.
Exactly.
So
And there you have it. And you could pretty much put it anywhere because now I put it in my tacos. I put it in my eggs, like I use it as a side for so many things that a lot of people would think like, oh, that's gonna weird. Not, it's not, people are not used to see these foods with like a breakfast or like a salad and things like that. But you can definitely add them up to so many things. And especially, I
mhm,
mean, if you're just add a little bit of kombucha, just add a little bit of it. You don't have to drink the whole bottle. Gotta remember that. For a whole plate. You're just thinking about a little side, a little sip, a little drink, and that's all you need.
exactly. It a little bit goes a long way.
Hmm. And especially if you're like mixing it up, you will probably not even really notice now that, you're adding these extra foods.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to say it, is you won't even notice if you're just adding a little bit, having a little bit. It you don't even notice. Actually, right before here, I realized I didn't have my sauerkraut with my lunch, so I ate it before we started talking.
Yay. And
You get used to it. You're like, I gotta have it in. I gotta get it in.
yeah, and I mean, I'm telling you, for anybody that has not tried it, do try it. They're delicious foods. So many out there and so many different ones. What is your favorite thing to do? I know we talk about sauerkraut because that's like super common and popular and it's very easy to get. Is there any other food that you're like, this one too, I add here and there to my diet and it's delicious or it's really good?
There's one thing that I do, but it has to be homemade because I haven't found it out. Is I actually make coffee and use the kombucha starter. So I ferment the coffee. I only have it on occasion and I usually have it cold, but it's just it's like a fizzy coffee. It's just refreshing. Like you don't need to add anything to it.
Wow. Okay.
So, and that's the thing, is if you're making stuff at home, you can get like super creative.
Mm-hmm.
And
How do you
then
make that?
also
Just
like
like kombucha?
you just use the same recipe as your kombucha and use your kombucha starter.
Mm-hmm.
Use some of your kombucha as the starter and it just turns into it. Like the first batch is a little, but then when you have a batch going, then the next batch is stronger coffee flavor because you're only pretty much having coffee at that point. You just, put the coffee, put the sugar, the same ratio, and let it sit for the 2 to 6 weeks, however long you ferment for, and go for it. And then
Wow.
fermented hot sauces is probably another one of my favorites to add into things.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you can buy that at the store either. I'm going to be honest with you. I grow peppers, so I have to do something with all the peppers. I generally will take a batch of hot ones at the end of the season and chop them all up with the salt and the vinegar and just leave them, let them go for pretty much until summer starts again. And then I make it into hot sauce. So it's like really
Wow.
fermented.
Yeah. 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 Because I know Tabasco is one of those hot sauces that use vinegar. There's like three ingredients, I think it says. It's
Mm.
like vinegar, pepper, and salt, I think.
Yep, that's pretty much all there's. And anyone who's getting nervous, like we keep saying, you ferment with salt, it's not a lot of salt. It's a whole head of cabbage or a couple, and which is like 2 to 3 pounds. It's a couple tablespoons of salt, if that. And I know a couple of tablespoons sounds like a lot, but you're only eating a very little bit. So by the time you're eating it, it's not super high in sodium if you have that fear of sodium.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a topic for you for another day, is sodium. But
Yes, yes, because I mean, we've talked about sodium. It also depends on the salt you're adding. And that's why I like to talk about homemade things, like when people are making their own things, it's so much better. Because, if you're taking already the time to eat better because you want to get healthier, find a day or two where you're like, today I'm going to make my own kimchi. Today I'm going to make my own. sauerkraut or whatever it is, because yeah, it will take you like an hour or so, whatever time, but you do it that one time, and then you have like a batch for like, I don't know, like a month or so.
Mhm.
Because you have it in the fridge and you're not eating the whole thing. Remember, you're just eating a tiny little bit here and there that you're adding to your diet. And you know what you're putting, because I hope you will be using the best quality products, which is like organic cabbage. Make sure you wash it well. Make sure you're using a good salt, not the super crazy cheap salt that you could
Yeah.
see in those little tubes, with little thing, maybe you're using Himalaya salt or Celtic salt, something that is a little bit more on a higher quality. And once you know the ingredients, you're buying good ingredients and you're making it yourself, it's just so much better because it's not going to be bad for you. You're an empower of what you're eating and what you're putting in your food. The same as when you do kombucha, because I'm like you, that like I don't put all these tons of sugar on it because I will not drink it.
Mhm. It's true. And sauerkraut is probably one of the least expensive to start with. I mean, two heads of sauerkraut is going to give you a half a gallon. I mean, two heads of cabbage, like two decent sized heads of cabbage, will give you almost a half a gallon of sauerkraut by the time you're done, which is a lot of sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Um, I use two heads, a purple head and a regular colored head. I guess it's white or green.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up with a quart each of sauerkraut, and then you can season it however you want. You could put lemon in it, you could put garlic in it, ginger, whatever you want to flavor it so that you have your variety. You can even put carrots in it and other vegetables at the same time. Like, it's fun to experiment, and then you figure, I made this and it's so good for me and my family. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the best part. And know the quality, and you know what's in it because you made it.
Exactly. Now you're not worried about like, oh, does this has a lot of sugar or is it too much sodium? I'm supposed to not be eating salt at this point. So yeah, I think it really empowers you when you start making things. Obviously, we know a lot of whoever is listening right now. You might be like, hey, I have two jobs, or I have kids, I'm a mom, I don't have time for all these nonsense. I have other priorities, and it's okay too. The good thing is like, as you mentioned, there's a lot of really good products out there that you can just pick some, when you go to the market and you're buying your groceries and stuff, you could be like, oh, let me try this today. Let me try that, and eat a little bit. We're not asking you to eat the whole bottle of things. Just a little bit. I insist. Just a little
Yes,
bit because that's all you need. Yeah.
exactly. And if you do have kids, it's kind of, depending on their age, it can be a fun science experiment making sauerkraut or fermented vegetables, or even finding a neat recipe for fermented ginger, and it turns into ginger ale. But that one you're going to really want to follow the directions because it expands in the bottle. So, but it's fun for kids when they
It
watch
might
it.
explode. Just
Yeah,
watch.
probably one of the few things that you ferment in plastic for that reason.
Right, right.
But you make, kombucha. Well, I've had kombucha explode. I had to clean it off the ceiling. It went like the second ferment can be tricky. That's why following somebody who knows what they're doing can really be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many things. There's so many technology that we can follow. I mean, it's really hard to kind of like mess it up. And if you do, it's fine. Just try it again because it's really cool. Once you start making your nice, cool recipe, you're gonna be like, I'm not gonna buy this at the store. I could make it home for like $5. Why am I gonna buy something else, So yeah, this is fermented
Absolutely.
food. It's just like awesome.
It is. It's the easiest way to start working on your gut. Like, most people don't understand that they're off until they start doing just a little bit of gut love, just a little bit. That's all they need. And they're like, oh, wow, I have more energy. Oh, wow, my moods are more stable. And it's just
Yeah.
even that one little teeny change. It's just amazing.
Yes, yes. What are some of the biggest thing you have found out on your like clients that once adding this, it just make like super huge impact on their lives and their gut health?
I think the most has been those that have struggled with weight loss. Like, and I'm not talking a lot of weight loss. Like they've lost weight, but they got stuck. The gut health kind of just helps propel them, because weight loss is really a side effect of being healthy. So they, the initial weight loss isn't, but like getting down to that nitty gritty, you need good health to get there and to stay. Like, we know calories, all that, but if your gut's right and it's not extracting extra calories out of the food you're eating, if it's balanced properly so you don't have those cravings, like those, something as little as adding in probiotic foods help with the cravings, help the gut rebalance out so that their moods are better. So, a lot of people I deal with are older. We're 50 and up. We dealt with emotional eating, having your brain working and not having those down moods. Yeah, we still have emotional eating here and there, but we can control it a lot better. It's how the gut is responding to our entire body. I think of just being for so unhealthy for so long,
Hmm.
that energy, the clearer brain or the clearer thinking, it's just, and it's such a simple thing. It's between lowering the sugar. I never tell anybody they have to give it up. That's on them. And then adding in the probiotics, those two balance out the mood, cravings, and help propel to the next level. It's just, and I think a lot of that has to do also with hormonal changes and years of stress and all of that. We didn't learn about gut health other than, take a pill, and that
Hmm.
wasn't working. That wasn't working.
It was not, yeah, for sure. And you know what? It makes me think too that this is like one of those way too. If you get anyone that's listening has kids, starting them to try fermented foods is gonna just really change just like their life in general for the future. Like what their gut is gonna be now too. Because also too, I feel like kids are eating all these a bunch of crap in school or with their friends or something like that. So I think giving them a little bit of fermented food, I think will be super important to just start them now as opposed to like when we're a lot older and we're trying to like fix things that they could have you could have started a long time ago.
Mhm. That I think you've made such a strong point, is the sooner you can start focusing on health in general, the better outcome you're going to have as you're older. Like, it's easy for me to say, well, if I started in my teens and 20, I can't go back now. I can only go forward. So think of it that way. And the gut wasn't anything back in the 80s and the 90s, wasn't talked about gut health in general. Like, other than if you had indigestion, you took a pill. Um, Bloating, gas, all of those things. There was always just a little medicine you took, but that's really wasn't the root of the problem. The root of the
Hmm.
problem was the gut bacteria, and we never really learned much about it,
Hmm.
until you start diving deep. And now I think people know a lot more. But kids, if you can get them started, the earlier you can get them started on a healthy gut, the better they're going to be in the future. I mean, you're going to see differences in school. They'll be able to pay attention a lot more.
Yeah, because I don't think we're still trying to uh come to that point of like really putting things together of like whatever happens in your gut, it's happening in the brain.
It is.
And and especially when you're little kids, you want your kid to be able to have the best gut brain relationship to develop better, to learn better, to just everything better, pretty much.
And we're seeing a huge rise in autoimmune diseases. And if you don't have one, I still suggest you work on your gut, because that's the key factor. It takes several things to trigger the autoimmune, but if you can keep your gut healthy, even if you have and you're predisposed to it, you can probably prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, I dealt with on and off of autoimmune diseases, and anytime I got my gut in order, all the symptoms went in remission. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really something to think about, because my gut got in a problem is what triggered the actual onset of it: stress, gut health, foods I was eating. But once you get that, when you reel that back in, your overall health improves. And that's, I think that's why I'm get so passionate about like the fermented foods, because it's got so much more benefit than just trying to take a pill that you don't know if it's doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know if it can go through the gastric, the stomach acid. They don't know if it's doing anything it needs to do once it reaches the point, down in the intestines. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we just know that regardless of it is how much the benefit you're getting from the actual probiotics that you're taking on a pill, we know that, and this is just a fact, every time you take a pill, your body is gonna work a lot more than if you actually just take a spoon of whatever food yogurt or whatever, which your body already knows how to process those things. So just thinking about that in the sense of like, if you're taking a pill, you're putting your body under a lot more stress than if you just take a spoon of yogurt or if you just take a little bit of whatever fermented food you want to try.
it's and you got to remember that the probiotic foods come with the elements that the bacteria feed on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just when you get a pill of probiotics, it doesn't have the food that the bacteria feeds on. It just has the probiotics in it, which are probiotics are your bacteria. So
Mm-hmm.
when you eat the fermented foods, it has the stuff that those bacteria feed on. So we know that your body has everything it needs. It just helps feed the rest of them as well. And that's why I'm so strongly, because I don't think we eat in a way that feeds our bacteria. So adding in a little bit of a probiotic food gives your body everything it needs. It gives you the bacteria and the food for the bacteria all in one little couple tablespoons of food, and you're on your way to the next thing you want to do that day.
Yes. And I know we talk about older people and then we were talking about kids. Is there someone that you're like, this section of the population cannot eat fermented food?
If you have a histamine intolerance, and mm, that's a hard one. You're probably going to have to know that from being tested from your physician or a functional medicine. If you have if you eat a fermented food and you get a lot of either hives or nasal congestion, you might have a histamine intolerance. And the problem with this is it's like the chicken or the egg. The histamine intolerance starts in your gut, and the stuff you need to help heal your gut causes the intolerance to get worse. So it becomes where you need a little bit more. You might need to do other things outside of fermented foods, but that would probably be the only population that shouldn't or should avoid it until they can get the histamine under control.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah.
just because you're allergic to pollen doesn't mean you're going to be having a problem with fermented foods. You actually, once you try them, you'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about very, very rare percentage of the population that
Yeah.
might have this. So in general, we're saying and overall fermented foods are great for everybody to help
Mm-hmm.
with the gut health.
Yeah. And if you find excuse me, if you find a problem, try to work on your gut in other ways and then add them back in. It becomes an issue that you still need those probiotics and fermented foods. And even if you take a pill, if you think you have a histamine intolerance, the pill's full of histamine too, so it doesn't really matter. You've got to figure out how to heal that gut to be able to start feeding your gut bacteria, or you're going to just be in this all constant histamine. And I don't know if anybody has ever had a histamine. It's not fun. It can be quite severe for some people, but it is a small percentage of the population that might have that problem. Other than that, if you're getting it from real foods, there's never really going to be a problem unless you're eating mold, which none of us should be eating mold. I know I said that you can scrape it off the sauerkraut. That's different than actually eating that part of the sauerkraut. You don't want to eat that part.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I think, it's just, as I said, just the more we learn, the more we try things, the more we try to make our own foods. That's always super helpful. That way we're gonna know what we're really putting into our body. So I think that's some of the things that we just need to keep in mind. And as you mentioned at the beginning of our talk, this health journey, it's work. So the better we come to peace with that, the better. Because, and not take it as like, oh my God, I have to do all this. If I want to be healthy, I need to do, eat this, eat that, do that. Night after 6, drink water. Like, don't take it as like, this is the worst job in the world, or it's too much for you, right? Do little by little, because the better you start feeling, the more you want to do. So
It's true.
you have to like change your life in one day, or you don't have to like change for tomorrow and be like, I'm gonna eat sauerkraut for 30 days and see how I do.
It is work, but it's, you know, rather than saying work, it's habits you have to build. And I feel taking the extra time to build these healthy habits and put in the work to build these habits where they become second nature and don't feel like work is a lot better than having achy joints. Like I'm sitting on the floor right now and I can get up. 7 years ago, when I started this journey, I would have to call my husband to help me up. And it wasn't just because of the weight. It was because my knees were bad, my joints were bad, my back was like, I wasn't mobile. So once you start getting into optimum health, nothing feels better. So the work is secondary. It's,
Don't think
it's a
about
lot of
it.
work being in pain every day. It's a lot of work being tired and in pain every day.
Yeah.
So you got to choose your heart, basically.
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Choose your heart. You want to have like problems getting up, or you want to just have a problem trying to figure out your next recipe to make your fermented food.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's choosing your heart, and life's hard. So just try to make it so that you're at least healthy in the whole
Hmm.
the whole scheme of things. Health. And health is being able to do what you want to do.
Hmm. And be happy and feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. This conversation has been just amazing. I think we have talked about a lot. We try to cover a lot of the fermented food topic. Is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
I just try it. Try it. All I can say is try it. If you can only get 1% better in your health journey every day, do you know how much better you'd be by the end of the year? Like just think of it that way. Just do a little bit. Don't go and say, okay, I can't have sugar. I can't do that. Just try adding things in before you take away. Then you take away. 1 month to add things in, the next week take away or reduce. Don't try to do it all at once if it's overwhelming, because it can be. And not everybody will stick with it if you do it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing a
Yeah,
little bit every day.
a little bit at a time. That's all we need. You don't have to change your life right now, but eventually, if you do little by little, by the end of the year, as you just said, you might just look back and be like, "Wow, now I make my own kombucha."
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, this has just been amazing. Thank you for all the information today. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, they have a little bit more questions still about fermented food or why you do, where can they find you?
I can be found at Holistic Health Made Simple pretty much everywhere. And if you need to send me an email, it's just Jolene at Holistic Health Made Simple. And I really appreciate this conversation. It was a lot of fun and a lot of information, but we both enjoyed the conversation. I can tell we're both kind of passionate about getting people healthy and one day at a
Yes.
time.
Yes, that's all we have, one day at a time. Thank you for being here today. I will put all your links on the show notes for anyone that wants to get in contact with you or have any more questions. And for everyone, if you need to check my website or you have any questions for me, you can check me out at alexbalgood.com. You can go to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, pretty much everywhere. Also, remember my book is out, so you can buy it on Barnes and Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for all this information. And everybody, please have an amazing and blessed day. Thank you.